Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today's guest is Tosha Schore, a peaceful parenting expert on aggression. I invited her into the Peaceful Parenting membership a few months ago to talk to us about aggression and to answer our members' aggression-specific questions. So many fantastic questions were asked. I know they'll help you if you're at all having any issues with aggression. And remember, aggression isn't just hitting. It's any expression of the fight, flight, or freeze, including yelling, spitting, throwing things, and swearing. Tosha is such a valuable resource on this issue. I really admire how she speaks about aggression and the compassion that she brings to both kids and parents who are experiencing aggression. One note, one of the members was okay with her question being used in the podcast, but she didn't want her voice used. So in the podcast today, I paraphrased her question and follow-up comments to preserve the flow of the conversation. As I mentioned, this is a sneak peek inside the Peaceful Parenting membership. If you would like to join us, we would love to have you. It is such a wonderful space filled with human touch and support. There are so many benefits, and it's my favorite part of my work as a parenting coach. We'll put the link to join us in the show notes, or you can visit reimaginepeacefulparenting.com/membership. If you know anyone who could use this podcast, please share it with them. And as always, we would appreciate your 5-star ratings and reviews on your favorite podcast player app. We've added sponsors to our podcast so we can keep making this podcast and our other free content to support families on their peaceful parenting journey. If you would like to listen to the podcast ad-free, or even if you'd just like to support our work and know you're helping us educate and support the word about peaceful parenting, you can become a supporter on Substack. For the cost of a fancy coffee, you can get the podcast ad-free as well as access to a monthly Ask Me Anything session where I answer your questions and support you. I know there are folks I support on Substack because I believe in the work they're doing and I want to be part of making their work possible and more accessible. I really hope you'll choose to support us. Go to sarah.rosensweet.substack.com or just search up my name and Substack and you'll find it. This podcast is brought to you by the Peaceful Parenting membership. For a low monthly subscription cost, you get direct access to me and twice weekly office hours drop-in group coaching, a library of peaceful parenting lessons on demand, a private community of parents who get it and are on this journey with you, plus guest expert sessions and monthly trainings on a theme, plus access to the past 6 years of materials inside our membership library. But why take my word for it? Here's what one of our members had to say. I had my husband watch one of your videos after a battle that he had with my daughter. He agrees with peaceful parenting in principle, but doesn't want to read about it. He just wants me to give him the Cliff's Notes versions of the principles. The video was incredibly helpful for him to understand some of the ways he can change his approach when he gets triggered and wants to yell or give consequences. I've seen him really try not to yell and use a calmer approach in his frustrating interactions with our kids the past couple of days. To learn more about the Peaceful Parenting membership, visit reimaginepeacefulparenting.com/membership. Remember, for an ad-free version of this podcast, become our supporter on Substack. Search up Sarah Rosensweet and Substack, and you'll find us. This podcast is brought to you by Yoto. Yoto is a screen-free audio player that lets your kids listen to audiobooks, music, podcasts, and more without screens and without being connected to the internet. No one listening and no one watching them. They can't go where you don't want them to go in the wild west of the internet, and they aren't watching screens. But they are being entertained or kept company with audio that you can buy from Yoto or create yourself on one of their blank cards. Books, podcasts, stories, or music, it's up to you and your kids. Corey loves the Yoto player and her kids love it even more. I wish it was around when my kids were little. To learn more about the Yoto player, go to reimaginepeacefulparenting.com/Yoto. Remember, for an ad-free version of this podcast, become our supporter on Substack. Search up Sarah Rosensweet and Substack, and you'll find us. Now, our feature presentation. Let's meet Tosha. Hello, Tasha. Welcome to the membership. I'm so excited that you're going to be here talking to us about aggression today. So maybe you could start out by just giving a brief introduction of who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Tosha Schore, and I am the founder of Parenting Boys Peacefully, where we are on a mission to create a more peaceful world, one sweet boy at a time. And I'm also the co-author of Listen, 5 Simple Tools to Meet Your Everyday Parenting Challenges. And I work with a lot of families with young kids who are struggling with hard behaviors like aggression. And my goal is to give you all hope and inspiration to keep on keeping on with the peaceful parenting practices because they do absolutely work, even or maybe even especially for really hard behaviors.
I love that you added that, especially for hard behaviors, because I think there's this fallacy out there that, yeah, peaceful parenting is nice if you have easy kids, but my kid needs more quote discipline or whatever. So I love that you called that out because I think it's absolutely true also. So maybe just we have some questions that from our members that people sent in, and I'm not sure some people on the call might have questions as well. But maybe we could just get started by you sort of centering us in what causes aggression. I was just on a call with some clients whose child was having some issues at school, which if we have time, I might ask you about. And the mom was saying, "Oh, he's being aggressive at school because I sometimes, shout or lose my temper." And I said to her, I that of course that plays a part in it, but there are lots of kids whose parents never shout or lose their temper who still are aggressive. So why is that? What causes aggression?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few things that can cause aggression. I often will say that aggression is fear in disguise because I've found that a lot of kids who are getting in trouble at school, they're yelling, they're maybe hurting siblings or hurting their parents. They are scared inside. Sometimes it's like an obvious fear to us, like maybe they're playing with a peer and the peer does something that feels threatening, goes like that in their face or something. And instead of just, play fighting back, they clock the kid or whatever. And sometimes the fears are a little bit more hidden and maybe could fall e e even into the category of lagging skills, or I don't even like to say lagging skills, but like skills that maybe they haven't developed yet. So school's a perfect example. I think a lot of kids often will be acting out in school, even aggressively, because they're being asked to do something that they don't yet have the skills to do, and that's pretty frustrating, right? It's pretty frustrating to be sort of asked and then demanded to perform in a certain way or accomplish something specific when you don't either feel the confidence to be able to do that or you don't yet have the skills to do that, which sort of spills into another reason that kids can get aggressive, and that's shame, right? So we can feel really ashamed if everybody else in the class, for example, or a lot of kids are able to just answer the question straight out when the teacher asks, and maybe we get stage fright, or maybe we didn't quite understand the example, or whatever it is. There can be a lot of reasons, but I definitely want to pull that parent away from blaming themselves. I think we have a negative bias, right? Our brain has a negative bias, all of us. And I think we tend to go towards taking it on ourselves. It's our fault. Like if we had just done X, Y, or Z, or if we hadn't done X, Y, or Z, my child wouldn't be acting out in this way or wouldn't be behaving in this way. But I always say to parents, well, that's a choice. Like there's like 50-50, right? We could choose to say, you know what? It could be that I did something, but I don't think so. Right? That's the other 50%. But we always go with the it's my fault 50. So part of my job, I think, is to encourage parents to lean into it's not like it's not my fault in the sense of nothing I does has an impression on my child, but it's not my fault in the sense of it's important that we as parents all acknowledge, and I truly believe this, that we are doing our best all the time. There is no parent I've ever met who purposefully doesn't behave in a way they feel good about, right? Or purposefully holds back their love or purposefully yells or anything like that. If we could do differently, we absolutely would as
Mhm.
parents.
So more like I didn't cause this. Like there's maybe something I could do, but I didn't cause this.
Right. I mean, like, look, let's just be honest. Maybe she did cause it. I mean,
Okay.
I've done things like maybe I've caused things, but so what? Right?
Mhm.
Like, I, there's nothing I can do at this point, and I can either sort of wallow in my, oh gosh, did I cause this? Or I could say, probably I didn't because there's so many other factors. Or I could say, maybe I did, but one, I'm confident that I did the best that I could in that moment.
Mhm.
And two, and this is an important part, is that I am doing whatever work I need. I am getting the support I need, right? I'm showing up to Sarah's membership or this call or whatever to take steps to do better in the future.
Mhm.
So if we're just like making a mistake and not doing anything to try to behave better next time, that's not worth much either. Like I remember once when my kids were little, I don't even remember what I was doing. I don't remember what the situation was, but I do remember very clearly that apologized. I said, I'm sorry. Like I won't do that again. And my kid goes, you always say that, and then you do it again. Right. And that was true. But like, if that were true because I was just saying, I'm sorry, and going about my next thing and not paying attention to the why or getting to the crux of what was causing me to behave that way, then that would be disingenuous. But
Mhm.
in fact, I was doing my own emotional work to be able to show up more often in ways that I felt good about. So I could genuinely feel good about that apology and I could not take it personally. And I could say, you know what? You're absolutely right. I do keep making this mistake. And I want you to know that I am working hard to try to change that behavior. And that was true.
Yeah, makes sense. So you mentioned before that you want parents to see aggression as fear in disguise. And you mentioned that the fear can be something obvious, like someone's gotten in your face and you're scared, or it can be fear of not being able to meet the expectations of your teacher or your parent, or shame that, can come from maybe even having made a mistake. You didn't say this, but I'm thinking of something common that often happens, like a kid like makes a mistake or does something that they didn't mean to do and then they lash out, right?
Right.
So how do we get from those feelings of fear and shame and to aggression? Because it doesn't happen for every kid, right? Like some kids will just cry or, say something, but then some kids really lash out and hit and throw things, shout and scream. So how does that happen? How do we get from A to B?
Well, I think all kids are different, just like all adults are different. And when we encounter fear, any of us, we go into our fight or our flight or our freeze, right? And kids who are aggressive go into fight.
Mhm.
So some kids do, and some kids don't. And I don't have any scientific research to back this up, but I would say part of this is DNA, part of this is the nature of the kid.
Right.
And I think that's also going back to the self blame. I
Mhm.
got 3 kids, they're all very different, right? They
Mhm.
struggled in the same house, same parents, same everything. They are different. They came into this world different, and they're still different.
Mhm.
And I can help guide them, but I can't change the core of who they are. So I think that aggression is those kids who go from I'm scared, I'm having to protect myself to that attack mode.
Right. Makes sense. And just, I mean, I know this, but it in the child's control?
No, it's not in the child's control. I mean, it is absolutely a reaction. And I think that's why I feel like having that concept of aggression being fear in disguise can be so helpful from a mindset perspective for parents, because it's so much easier to have empathy for a child who we see as being scared
Right.
than one who we see as
Being a jerk.
picking his brother or a jerk or
Yeah.
disrespectful or rude or all of the terms that we use to describe these kids when we're struggling.
Right. Well, there may be a few other points that I want you to make, but they might come out in the context of some questions from
Okay.
members. So I know at least two people on the call right now had sent me a question in case they couldn't make it. But I'm gonna ask Sonia. Are you willing, Sonia, to unmute yourself and ask your question? Hi.
Sure. Hi.
Hi, Sonia.
Sonia wonders how to handle aggression when you have multiple kids. She has 3 kids, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a baby. And it's often her 7-year-old who reacts in fight mode. And she's trying to figure out how to keep her cool and also how to handle it and take care of the other kids and manage him.
Yeah. So one thing that I noticed is how Sonia kind of glossed over the keeping her own cool. And I want to bring that to everybody's attention because we all do that. But actually, when we're dealing with aggression, we have to kind of come at it from a lot of different angles. So there's no sort of one magic pill I can give her, but it has to actually start with us.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean that we have to reach nirvana or become the Buddha or never yell before we can make any progress. But we can't put that aside and just go, okay, like, what do I do to get my kid to stop doing this? Because our energy has a huge effect on our kids' aggression. And usually, well, let me just say, it makes sense to ask yourself questions like, how am I feeling about this? Because most people are feeling scared, either scared of their child, right? They're going to get hurt, or they're going to hurt a sibling, right? They're going to hurt the baby, or scared for their child. He's going to, end up in juvenile hall. He's going to end up, the next school shooter. He's going to, right? So we project forward. So if we're having this fear for our child or fear of our child, that child is soaking up that feeling. And I don't know about you, but I've never met anybody who could actually change their behaviors, who was inspired, motivated, or able to change their behaviors when everyone around them was like scared of them or scared for them. I mean, occasionally maybe there's somebody who's like going to prove the point, and because of the world is against them, right? And this is like, a Hollywood film or something, but most of us don't work that way. So all the I want to come out from all the angles. So there's the take care of yourself piece, but at the same time, we have to keep our kids safe. One thing that I think really helps is to pay attention to the pattern of when the aggression is happening so that she's not surprised. Because if we're surprised, then we act in surprising ways to ourselves. And, we don't show up as our best. So to pay attention, does this happen at a certain time of day when there's a certain constellation of kids playing together, when one particular child is present, when you're doing something particular, if there's another parent, when they're present or absent, like pay attention to these things so that you can show up ready. Because if you can change your story in your head from, I have no idea when this happens all the time, it happens out of the blue, which is really disempowering, to, I've noticed that every afternoon when I pick my 7-year-olds up from school and bring them home, and then I go in the kitchen to make a snack. I mean, I'm making all of this up, right?
Yeah.
That 7-year-old boy, lays on top of the baby or whatever. Then it's much more manageable. Then you can say, okay, well, I remember this call that I was on, and they talked about maybe there being some fear in there. Well, I don't know what the fear is. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to be ready. I'm not going to let it happen. So rather than make that snack, I'm going to make it before that kid comes home, or I'm going to just pull out some frozen pizza or whatever. But I'm going to stay present with that child during that time and expect that the upset will happen. Because then what happens is when that child goes to lay on the baby, I don't know what the aggression is. Yeah. But goes to lay on the baby, then you can actually physically get in the way, right? You can prevent that from happening. And then what happens is, because that child, the 7-year-old, has something to push against, right? Something that's preventing them from acting on their fear response, from acting on their fighting. What happens then is there's this sort of balance. It's like a magic reaction that happens where he's able to erupt like a volcano and release the tension, those fears, the upsets. Maybe it's like 12 things that happened to him at school today, or maybe there was some shame around not knowing the answer when he was called out at school, or whatever it was. But there's suddenly space with an attentive adult who remembers that that child is scared. So they have empathy. They're not worried about the child, or they're not caught by surprise. right? In quotation marks. So we're not going to jump at them. And that child has the opportunity then to heal. That release of the feeling is what heals the child. It's like pulling up weeds in your garden by the roots, as opposed to just kind of sometimes you pull them and they break off, and then the next day you got the whole thing back again, right? So this tool, which in our book we talk about as stay listening, where we're staying and we're allowing space for the child to feel, is what over time will change that fight response. That's actually the gold nugget, that over time will both change the intensity of the outburst, but also change the frequency, if that makes sense. How is any of that landing for you?
Sonia responded that it was very helpful and that, like she's told me before, that her baby's almost 1 and this started happening a lot right after she had the baby. She's also says that she's done my Transform Your Family Life course and she's still working on it. And she's done more of the welcoming feelings, and she has put together that it's usually in the afternoons. So Tosha is right about that. And it's happening after school, and she's put together that there are things happening at school that aren't in line with how she and her husband want to have their child treated, and she thinks that's related.
Yeah. So in light of this new information, I would also say, and I'm sure Sarah's talked to you about this as well, but pouring in as much connection to that child as possible. And it can feel, especially when you have multiple kids, that it's unfair, right? One kid is getting more. I don't know. Are you familiar with the concept of special time, Sarah? Is that something that you teach?
Yeah.
Okay. If you're doing special time, oftentimes we talk about, or I talk about at least, I'm not a fair kind of a person, right? I'm a life's not fair kind of a person. My kids will tell you that. But when it comes to special time, I always encourage parents to think about a week and to try to give your kids about the same amount of special time over a week. But, and here's the caveat, when we have a kid who is struggling, they are demanding more of us. They are demanding more attention. And our time didn't increase, right? The amount of time that we have to spend with each child didn't increase. And that means that we are going to need to devote more time. It's going to be uneven. But that child, and especially this is probably the number one reason that I hear for aggression to start. And we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but is when a younger sibling is born. I mean, it is so often the trigger, I can't tell you. And if I could go back to all of those parents and say, don't worry about being fair, just pour as much extra love and connection and yumminess into that child who's struggling as you can, it will pay off later. You can make it up to the other kids later. In fact, you're giving them a gift by helping their older brother, because then his behavior isn't going to have that negative effect on them. So I think that we get stuck in the fairness. Sometimes, I'm not saying you do this, Sonia, this is just from my experience. And then we hold back from giving that child what they need. So special time isn't the only thing. Like I would say, make a list of things that you do with that 7-year-old that creates laughter between you, that you both feel really good. You have that yumminess, like, oh, you're loving on him and he's loving on you. And maybe that's your shooting hoops in the front yard, or maybe it's you're drawing a picture together, or jumping on the trampoline, or reading a book. I mean, it could be anything at all. You can do those things, and you can do it with the other 3 kids around also. Keep doing all of that stuff. And you're going to have to, I think, carve out some time for one-on-one special time, named, timed, where he gets to lead and he gets to be the boss.
That's awesome. And we always talk about equity versus equality with the sibling relationships. And I think
Oh,
that's,
yeah, I love that.
yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
This podcast is brought to you by the Peaceful Parenting Membership. For a low monthly subscription cost, you get direct access to me twice a week in group coaching drop-in office hours. You also get a library of peaceful parenting lessons, a private community of parents who get it and are on this journey with you, guest expert sessions, and monthly trainings on a theme. Plus, you get access to the past 6 years of materials and resources inside the Peaceful Parenting Membership library. But why take my word for it? Here's what one of our members had to say. Apologies for the long list of wins. I'm just so happy. After months of investment in the approaches I have learned through Sarah's membership, including access to her through office hours and the Facebook page, the wisdom of the private community, and the comprehensive library of resources with new ones being added every month, available through the membership. I am seeing such tangible results. I am forever grateful for having stumbled upon the membership. Total life changer. To learn more about the Peaceful Parenting membership, visit reimaginepeacefulparenting.com/membership. Remember, for an ad-free version of this podcast, become our supporter on Substack. Search up Sarah Rosensweet and Substack, and you'll find us. Let's take a quick break to hear about the Yoto Player. Yoto is a new sponsor of our podcast. I only promote products that I really believe in, and Yoto is a great product. I wish they were around when my kids were growing up. Yoto is a screen-free audio player for kids. It uses physical cards to play stories, music, podcasts, and other audio content, encouraging independent listening and play. You can buy the cards for your favorite books, from the classics like Charlotte's Web or Roald Dahl, or newer books like Captain Underpants. You can also make your own cards of podcast stories or music from MP3 files. Yoto also creates original content like radio and podcasts for kids. The possibilities for listening are varied and endless. Yoto also features a nightlight, an OK to wait clock, and other functions like white noise and an alarm. It's not connected to the internet, so kids can't go where you don't want them to go, and no one is listening in on them. And did I mention it's screen-free? I learned about Yoto from Corey. Here's what she says. The Yoto Player is by far my favorite parenting tool that I've ever purchased, and I recommend them to everyone who has kids. They're an amazing screen-free audiobook player that have been an absolute lifesaver for teaching my kids to play independently. Both my kids carried their Yoto players around the house, listening to books while drawing, doing Lego, and even relaxing in their rooms before bed. We also take Yoto players everywhere with us: short or long car trips, sporting events, restaurants, and even doctor's appointments. On a recent vacation, their Yoto players got them through an 8-hour drive and were used every evening in our hotel to help my kids relax after very busy days. Yoto has an impressive and ever-growing collection of books you can buy and have absolutely helped inspire a love of reading in both my kids. Thanks for the first-hand recommendation, Corey. And I also just want to highlight that you don't have to buy their books. You can buy blank cards and record your own content. To learn more, visit reimaginepeacefulparenting.com/Yoto. That's reimaginepeacefulparenting.com/Yoto, YOTO. I hope you check them out, and I'm just so happy to have them on as a sponsor for the podcast. Let's get back to the podcast. Priya, do you want me to ask your question, or do you want to ask the question since you're on the call? Or maybe she's stepped away or can't unmute herself. She wants me to ask. Okay. So I'm going to find Priya's question and ask it. Priya says, my 5-year-old gets angry at anything and everything. He has zero tolerance for any kind of dislike or disagreement. We acknowledge his feelings with empathy, doing our best to stay calm and give him time to process his emotions. The only limit we consistently set is holding him from hurting people or property while he yells, screams, says hurtful things, and tries with full rage to attack us. We're consciously making time for roughhousing, special time, connection, laughter, and tears, though he rarely cries, and we talk about asking for help before things escalate. I've been trying to track patterns by logging some incidents, but sometimes it feels completely unpredictable. We often have no idea why he's screaming. If I push a chair slightly, he gets angry. If someone else presses the elevator button, he gets upset. If he has a plan in his mind and we don't pick up on it, he becomes extremely frustrated. He gets irritated and grumpy very easily. It's gotten to the point where we feel like we have to expect an outburst at any moment. It looks like it's becoming a habit for him, and I feel like I'm starting to walk on eggshells, always watchful for what might happen when I say or do something.
Yeah. So this is a really, believe it or not, common situation. Did she say he was 5? Is that right?
5, yeah.
Yeah. So I cannot tell you the number of parents who come to me and this is what they say: I'm walking on eggshells, right? If we get to the point where we're walking on eggshells, generally what that says to me is that we're not either setting enough limits or we're not setting limits effectively. And one thing that I would suggest to this or Priya is to take a minute to think about whether or not there are places where she's feeling resentment. That's always like a good sign for me. Like, if I'm feeling resentment about something, then that's probably a place I need to hold a limit. If I'm not, then there's more like wiggle room. So when this is happening all the time about everything, I would say get really clear on what limits are important to you and what limits are not. right? So if you're in public in the elevator, and you don't want to deal with like a big meltdown about the elevator button, can you plan for that? And you know that that's an issue. And when you go in, you could say to people, hey, my son would really like to press the buttons. What floor would you like?
Mhm.
Right? You
Here's
can
our elevator operator.
exactly. Here's our elevator operator. What floor, please? Or if somebody presses the button, or if she's pressing the button, to just go in knowing, like, I'm not going to press the button. I'm going to let my child do this. And if somebody else has already pressed it, you can say, you know what? Hey, let's take the next elevator and then we'll press it. You can press it. So there are places where we can be flexible, but we don't want to do that all the time, because essentially what this child is showing me is that he has a real intense lack of flexibility. And ultimately, like, the goal that I would have for him would be slowly and lovingly and lovingly to help him increase that flexibility, so that, yeah, maybe he's not going to say, oh, shoot, I'm feeling really disappointed because I didn't get to press the elevator button and I really like to do that. But maybe instead of having like a huge tantrum, he just, gets like a sourpuss face and crosses his arms. Okay, I'll take that. That's better, right? We're moving in the right direction. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of things right, but I would hone in on limit setting. Really, are you taking the time to think about what kind of limits you want to set? Are you letting go of limits when you know that you don't have the wherewithal to stay calm in the face of the upset? So oftentimes, like, I'm hearing Priya say, she does a lot of stay listening. I would be curious to know, like, what does that stay listening look like? Because, like, I was working with a dad this week, a client of mine, or last week, and we were talking about a situation that was going on with his kid who was coming home really frustrated with homework. And what ended up coming out of his mouth was, I thought I was stay listening, but I think I actually wasn't stay listening, right? Because stay listening isn't about trying to calm the child or trying to get them to stop what they're doing. It can't be with the goal of, let me get this kid to quiet down, kind of a thing. Stay listening is really holding space lovingly for whatever needs to come out, which means, yeah, all the words, we don't take them personally.
Can I
We
just interject something that for my community, what they would recognize stay listening as is welcoming feelings?
Mm,
Just because that'll be a familiar face to them. So I just want to do.
okay, yeah, absolutely. Right. But welcoming feelings, I feel like we need to also talk about, like, what does that look like? What
Mhm.
does that look like when we welcome feelings? Because, you could be upset and I could just be
Yeah.
waiting for you to be done, right? I could, like, okay, I'm not going to shut you down, but, hey, I'm just, hey, whatever, you do what you need to do. I'm going to go answer my email. That's, I can welcome the feelings like that. But again, coming back to our energy, what energy are we bringing to that? Are we really staying present with the energy of, we're going to get through this, with the energy of, you're safe, with the energy of, I'm here with you,
Mhm.
right? Like, can that child sense that they're not alone, that you're on their team? And that's like maybe a good litmus test. If you were to ask yourself, do you feel like your child would feel like you're on their team, or that you're butting heads? And
Mhm.
if the answer is butting heads, then the question is, what can you shift so that your child will feel like, hey, we're in this together?
Sounds good. Priya, I don't know if you have anything to add. It sounds like maybe she can't unmute herself, but she says, he screams really loud, so we usually stay quiet and don't say anything because it's really loud. We wait for the moment to pass before we can say anything, at the same time being present. So she's saying dare, trying to be present, sometimes trying to say, I see you're really upset.
Yeah. And so when she says, I'm sorry, a little bit via you here,
Mhm.
but when you say, Priya, before I say something, what is it that you're saying? Because another thing about stay listening or welcoming feelings, from
Same.
my perspective, is that w- saying something actually doesn't really have a place. So if we need to say something, it should, I think, or let me just phrase that. I find it most effective when it's something that essentially allows that child to feel safe, to realize that they're not alone, right? To realize that we're on their team and to realize that it's not going to last forever. So that they're loved, these types of things. So I wouldn't, if you're naming feelings, and I don't know that she is or isn't, but if you're naming feelings, which is something that a lot of professionals, for example, will recommend, I would play around with stopping that and seeing if that makes a difference, because sometimes that's a huge trigger for kids. And maybe even I see you're upset or whatever it is that she said, that also might be a trigger. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to really not say anything at all. And just think about each of these things as an experiment. Take a day and don't say anything at all and see if it makes a difference. Other things to try, because it sounds like he's quite sensitive, is distance, right? How close are you to that child? Like some kids don't want you all up in their face. Some kids want to be on your lap and hug. Some kids want to be a room's distance away. So play with distance, play with tone.
Love that. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Tasha. Does anybody else who's on the call have a question? And if not, I have questions that were sent in, but I want to give priority to people who are here. And Priya says, thank you, Tasha.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm trying to work without the direct back and
Yeah,
forth.
no,
So I hope that was helpful.
that was great.
And I
Lindsay.
want to acknowledge that it is really hard. It is hard.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's one of the
It
most
won't last forever either. Like it's absolutely move throughable. I can assure you of that.
Lindsay, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question about my son, actually. He's 10 years old, and I have a 10-year-old boy and then a 7-year-old girl. And a lot of times, there's kind of two different questions, but between the sibling, a lot of times my daughter will be like, have verbal aggression towards him. And then he's a little more sensitive, and he'll hold it in and he won't spit out things back at her, but then he eventually will just hit her. And like he comes with the physical aggression. So kind of as the parent, like proactively trying to step in there, like how do I handle both of those when one is verbal, maybe aggression, and one is physical? And I know it can escalate there. Where do I step in?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to appreciate that you can see that there's a dynamic there. Because oftentimes we get into this place as parents where we're like, this person is the aggressor and this person is the victim. Because oftentimes there is a pattern like that. But it's beautiful that you can see that this dance that they're doing.
Yeah.
And so if you see it kind of as a dance, you can kind of play around and experiment with interrupting it in different ways.
Okay.
I would say that in terms of the verbal aggression, what I have found works best, and again, I was talking to a client yesterday and he was saying to me that this is what works. I'm like, okay, so let's do more of that. You came out of your mouth and you said it works when you do it. Let's do more. And that is being playful in the face of the verbal aggression. And so it can look like a lot of different things. And you could say ahead of time to your daughter something like, hey, I've noticed that, sometimes these nasty words come out of your mouth towards your brother, and I know you don't mean them. So I'm gonna pay attention and just try to help you with that, because I know you don't want to hurt his feelings.
Yeah.
And just, outside the moment, just kind
Right.
of toss that out there. And then in the heat of the moment, I mean, you can just get as goofy as you can think. You could get, a paper bag and just put it over her head, right? Or you could get those indoor snowballs and just start pelting her with snowballs. You could do what we call the vigorous snuggle, which we write about in the book, which is something like, do you know what happens to little girls who call their brothers, stupid buttheads or whatever it is? And then you, rather than push away, which is what we tend to want to do, is like, you do something goofy, right? They get their elbows licked, and then you're like chasing after her elbow and like trying to lick it. What you're going for is laughter, right? You're trying to elicit laughter because she's stuck in a hard spot where she can't feel compassion for him and she can't feel your love or anybody's. And so laughter will loosen that up. So I would say interrupt the verbal aggression with play.
Okay.
And some of those things will maybe annoy her. Some of them will lead to laughter. And then sometimes you'll do an experiment and it'll annoy her and she'll explode. And what I want to say about that is that's okay, because like we talked about with the school incident, it's an opportunity for her to do that healing and release the tensions and the hurts and the upsets and the gripes and all the stuff that she's holding in there. So when that happens, if you can welcome those feelings and not
Mhm.
try to shut them down or judge her, or what many of us sort of in the peaceful parenting world will do is just talk to her about it. Like if you can let all of that go,
Yeah.
you'll see the behaviors lessen. So,
Okay.
that would be, I mean, we talked a little bit about the physical stuff before. So I thought if for this question, I would focus more on the verbal.
Yeah.
In the sibling dynamic, just kind of rotate who you go to so they don't feel like there's sort of one bad guy and one like, woe is me sibling,
Yeah.
right? Because ultimately, what our goal as parents is to nurture that sibling relationship, right? I don't know. Like I just had a birthday and like, I'm like, this is my best birthday ever. People are like, really? How's it your best birthday ever? I'm like, because like a lot of people couldn't come to my party, but all three of my boys were home and we sang karaoke. And like the three of them like sang me a song and like sang all this. It's like there is nothing I think we want more than to see our kids loving each other, enjoying each
Mhm.
other, like having a strong relationship down the road. And let me tell you, these kids were at each other. I mean, now they're like 18, 20, and 22. But I have been in your shoes where
Yeah.
my mom would call me and be like, I'm afraid they're going to kill each other. I'm worried. I'd be like, it's okay. I got this, mom. Things will change.
Yeah.
But we do want to experiment, interrupt the behaviors.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the trying different interventions and then also being prepared for her to like not enjoy some of them as well. Cause I think that happens a lot more than like the positive, playful
Right.
things. So I appreciate that space to like let that happen too. And that's okay.
Yeah, and it's even more than okay. Like that's what's kind of what needs to happen in order for
Hmm.
her to shift, in
Yeah.
order for her to be able to show up differently. She's
Yeah.
stuck. Just think of her as being stuck.
Yeah.
And the
And maybe
question
it's
is,
not going to fix that moment, but later on it'll be less and less.
right? Yeah, and it happens much more quickly than we think. Oftentimes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the other quick question. Do I have time, Sarah, to ask the second?
I
Is that
should.
okay? Okay. The second one is more it's my 10-year-old. So recently, like he was at a play date. He's getting to play with a lot more of his friends. They're all playing football and sports and things. And he's just a bigger kid. My husband's 6'5", so he's just naturally bigger than a lot of the kids. And he's super playful, but he gets like playful aggression. And like one of the moms was saying, like, oh, I've seen the dynamic of how all the boys are playing, and I noticed Calvin sometimes gets a little too aggressive, and her son Luke is pretty small. And Luke is like, yeah, I get trampled sometimes. And so the mom was like, I just try and tell Calvin like how big he is and, his awareness. But I know it happens with his sister, and I think it probably happens at school sometimes too, that he doesn't realize his size and that maybe it comes out to be as like, I don't know if he like has internal aggression or if it's just playful and he's not aware of how
Yeah.
big he is.
I mean, I'd say two things about this. One is I always have to ask the question in these situations, is it the kids who are having the problem or is it the parents who are having a problem? And I don't
Yeah.
know the answer in this situation, but oftentimes our kids play a lot rougher than we feel comfortable with, but they're all actually having a good time. I mean, the way
Yeah.
that you said that kid reported didn't sound like it it was a problem. I could be wrong, and it could be a problem, but I think it's worth asking whether or not it's a problem. Is that mom worried, or is the kid not having fun?
Yeah.
So just to keep that in mind, because there's
Okay.
often a par between what we're feeling like comfortable with and like the way our kids are going at each other. And
Right.
and I think in that situation, we do want to stay close if we're not sure, and just to ask. Like if you notice that energy going up, just say like, hey, are you all having fun? If everyone says yes, okay. If one person says no, then we know we need to intervene, right?
Okay.
So that's one piece. And then I think it's about body awareness for him.
Hmm.
And maybe one thing that you could do at home would be some practice, sort of physical wrestling matches or something of the sort, where you could just pretend like you're in a ring with
Hmm.
a timer and do like 15-second, 30-second sessions or whatever you call it. I'm not a boxing person or whatever, but I don't rounds, maybe it's rounds.
Yeah.
So where somebody's actually the ref and saying, okay, go at it. And then when the whistle blows, when the ref blows the whistles, everyone has to run back to their corners. And so we're increasing sort of the awareness of stop, start, stop, start. And then also, I think it's oftentimes a good idea to have kind of a, what do you call it? A emergency word, secret word, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The word.
Safe word.
What's the word?
Safe word.
Safe word.
Yeah.
Safe word. And so you all could figure that out at the beginning of this game. And in fact, that's something that he could transfer over to his play with his friends. Like, once he learns, he's like, I know I'm big, like, I'm just having a good time. I know, I don't want to hurt you, but if things are getting too rough, like, say banana, and I'll know, like, I got to pull it. But banana is going to work a lot better than, hey, like, stop doing that. Or a parent coming in and saying, hey, be careful. You need to be careful. You're a lot bigger than him. Like, you need to pull back. That's not going to work as well. But you have to practice those things at home.
Yeah.
So come at it from two different angles.
Yeah, I like how that is. He and his sister have a thing where if they're being too much, they yell T.
Yeah.
And so if they're like T, and then they know like, oh, that's a timeout. Like I need to pause for a second.
Perfect.
So yeah, maybe just, telling him like set it up with your friends, like so they can say it. Yeah.
Yeah. If he already has that skill with his sister, that's amazing. And then, so we just transferred over to Frank.
Yeah. And I agree. It could be a little more parent than kid because the kid's like inviting Calvin over all the time and wants him to come back. So I'm like, I think they're having fun, and it just may be the parent's perception or protection of her child.
Right. And I think it's fair to just ask.
Mm-hmm.
You ask the child. I mean, you can ask the child if the child's at your house.
Yeah.
You can just say like, hey, if you guys need me, I'm in the other room. Or whatever. Like you don't have to. I don't like to assume that there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's very sweet. I just think he just plays rough sometimes, and
well, some kids like to play rough, and the other thing is like if we interrupt too much, we're interrupting like the development of important emotional intelligence. Because one of the ways that kids learn or build emotional intelligence is through playing with one another, right? If they play too rough, they're going to lose their playmate.
Right.
If they don't play rough enough, they're also going to lose their playmate, right? This kid might like to play rough. I mean, this little kid might like to play rough because he doesn't have that opportunity with other kids. And like, it's an opportunity to sort of be bigger and use strength and feel, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's something about the dance that they do when they play. I remember reading research about this in the animal kingdom. It was I forget what his name was. This was like a million years ago at a conference when I was a linguist who was talking about this. And it was super, super interesting. And I thought, wow, okay. And so I think we need to let our kids also do that dance and just be present so that if there is a problem, we can step in, let them know that we're there, but don't assume there's a problem when nobody's complaining.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
That's helpful.
So I'm conscious that we only have about 8 minutes left with you. And if I don't think anyone else on the call has a question, so I will go to a question that was sent in. And actually 2 questions that were sent in, and I'm not sure how different they are. So I'm going to tell you both of them and see if you can answer them both together or if you think they're separate, if that works.
Okay.
So one of them is a member who has a child, a girl who is just about to turn 8. And when she gets upset, she hits and throws things at her mom. And they haven't been able to, and she's been following peaceful parenting, but still hasn't been able to curb this. She doesn't have any issues anywhere else except for her mom. Second person is has a 12-year-old daughter that is hitting, kicking, pinching, saying mean words, etc., to her younger siblings when they're not doing what she wants them to do. She's the oldest of 5, has younger siblings who are 10, 8, 4, and 2. And she didn't mention this, but I know she also, when she gets upset, she will do that to her mom too.
Yeah. So for me, these are really both limit setting issues, right? Like I said earlier, we have to come at aggression from all the different angles, right? So we started out at the beginning with the first question about like, hey, we got to focus in on our own healing and our own triggers, and make sure that we're not sort of trying to skate over that and pretend that we're going to be able to be better without addressing anything. We also have to focus on connection. Like somebody said, they're tracking. Yeah, we need to pay attention. Like, when does this stuff happen? We need to pour in connection, like we talked about. Make a list of all the things that are yummy when you do them together. Just do more, do more, do more. Use play in the ways that we've talked about. But limits aren't necessarily the place to start. But if there are safety issues, then we have to go right there. So if the problem, well, lots of problems, but one thing that I've seen is that if we let a child, quote unquote, succeed, or if a child succeeds in hurting us, let's just say let's say we get a stapler thrown at us and we end up with a black eye, or a cut on our face, or whatever it is, that child feels more fear than they felt before, because there's a huge amount of fear associated with having that much power when you're so small, and feeling like the adults in your life can't keep everybody safe, right? Because our number one job, in my opinion, is to keep everybody safe and alive. Let's just start there. So this is just basic. So that means that in a situation like this, you're going to want to pay attention. You're going to really want to track when this happens. It's good it only happens with you. I think that's telling, in the sense that she feels safe enough with you to be able to show you that she's kind of holding things together out in the world, but actually feeling yucky inside. And these feelings need to come out somehow. And the next step is you sort of figuring out, like, well, how do I want to show her that, yes, I can keep her safe? And that is likely going to look like you physically anticipating her throwing something, or you see that she reaches for the stapler and you're going to rush in and you're going to put your hand on her hand on that stapler. Like, I don't want that stapler to get thrown. And I'm not going to lie, it's going to look messy and it's going to be a struggle and all of the things. That's fine as long as you're calm. If you feel by the throwing and you don't feel like you can stay calm, and you can feel like, talk about, the sweet child underneath the yucky feelings. So let's got the throwing or the hitting or the cussing out or the whatever up here. And there's always this sweet child underneath. If you lose sight of that child, then in a situation like this, I would rather you walked out of the room and the stapler hit the door and it breaks the window, or it dents the door, or whatever it is. I don't want that to happen, but I would rather that happen than it hit you and then you hit her, or you held her harder than you want, or you screamed horrible things at her that you wished afterwards you could take back, right? And I say these things not because I think you're doing this, but just because in my 20 years of working in this world and raising 3 kids, like, I know what those feelings feel like, and they're real, and they happen to all of us. So if you feel out of control, remove yourself, even at the cost of the window. But which is why we have to start with getting ourselves in what I call good enough emotional shape, because ultimately you need to be able to move in, put your hand on that hand with the stapler, and just say something like, I can't let you throw that, sweet girl. Can't let you throw that. And that's it. And then she's going to have a huge upset. She's going to fight, and she's going to try and let go of me, and I can't breathe and whatever. And unless she breathes through her hand, like, she's breathing okay, right? But that upset again is the gold nugget. Like, then you welcome the feelings and you allow them to pour out, because something happened. Something is going on. And it might not be that one thing happened during that day at school or wherever, but it might be that there was a little nick and a little nick and a little nick. And every time, whatever, she didn't get what she wanted, or a sibling got something and she didn't, or you answered a sibling before you answered her, or whatever it is, they're just all like little things. They happen. They're not your fault or anybody's fault. It's just that if every time they happen, she doesn't release the yucky feelings that arise in her as a result, then what's happening is they're building up. And so I like to think of it as like the sand or the sedimentary rock, or on the beach, you can see those striations in it, right? So it's like sand is really soft. You can kind of like brush it off. But when it sits and it hardens, then you have to take like a chisel to it.
Yeah. For our people, we call that getting a full emotional backpack when you're talking
Mhm.
about the nicks that build up over time. So that'll resonate for people.
Exactly.
Thank you so
So
much,
yeah,
Tasha.
I hope that was helpful. But you have
Oh,
to physically get in there.
yeah, physically get in there. And if it happens too fast to catch the first one, you just kind of do your best and try for the second one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you expect the upset and you stay with it if you can,
Yeah.
remembering that that's just a scared little girl in there,
Yeah.
right? You don't know what this is about. Just trust that her body knows that it needs to do this healing. And she's pinned you because she knows you can handle it, that you won't lose sight of her goodness, that your love is strong. And that's an honor. I know
Mhm.
it feels hard, but it's actually a real honor when we're the one who gets chosen for that emotional work.
I love that. And I want to highlight that a lot of what you talked about today was our own inner work on keeping ourselves calm and keeping our mindset of keeping track of that sweet child, as you say, the sweet child inside that's just afraid and needs us in those moments. Because it can feel, I think a lot of parents can feel like, quote, victimized. And that's probably going to get them deeper into the aggression than get them out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so we want to feel, I hope that after this call that you feel empowered. I mean, I hope there's just one thing that you can take away and experiment with doing differently. Just think of these things as experiments. You don't have to get it perfect, right, whatever the word is that you have in your head, right? Just try something. Just pick one idea that you heard and try it. Try it for a day. See how it goes. And remember that if it leads to big upset on the part of your child, that doesn't mean you did it wrong. It probably means you're actually doing something right.
That's so key. I love that. Thank you so much, Tasha. We really appreciate you and your work. And everyone, be sure to let us know how it goes for you when you try some of these things. Let us know in the Facebook group. And thank you, Tasha. Thanks for getting up early and meeting with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me back, Sarah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.